I would take one of the families in, up on, their offer, where I can get a hot bath. I can get something to eat. I have some heat if it was, in the wintertime when things would be occurring inside of my household. So one of the other family was a family that by day they portrayed the image that they worked 9 to 5, but at night they were street people, and so they was involved in running guns, selling drugs. But you wouldn't know that, and a part of the image or the fronting that a drug dealer does is he wants to portray an image that he's not a drug dealer. He or she is not a drug dealer. So if you could live in a neighborhood that wouldn't profile you or wouldn't suspect you, that's what you do. That's where you go. So basically, you do your dirt on the other side of town, not where you lay your head at. So this particular family, I didn't care though. All I cared about was I'm receiving love and affection and attention that I'm not getting, and even something to eat that I'm not getting in my household.
Did they have kids?
They didn't have kids, but they were young themselves, but, young, like in their 20s.
Do you think that they saw you as somebody they could turn into someone who could work for them?
Absolutely. And that's what eventually happened. And so I would go on trips with them. One of the brothers or cousins, I would go with them from one side of Detroit to the other side of Detroit. And I would stuff my pockets with dope. Sometimes I would use the waistband of my pants to carry guns. And so this was during an era in time in which the stop and frisk wasn't as open.
Right.
Or wasn't allowed to be done to minors. It's easy for the gang squad or narcotic squad to say, hey, where you going, to the person that they know. And he can say, I'm dropping my little brother or little cousin off. Because it's early in the morning. It was no suspicions, or not like it is today. Being known in the streets that I'm hanging out with this person now begins to give me a reputation. And if I got a reputation, I got street cred. And if I got these things now, things that's not going to happen to him ain't going to happen to me. Because of the fact that I'm with him and people seeing this, they're not going to be too quick to do anything to me. So it's automatic respect, automatic attention is given to me. And so I done this, and of course, having and receiving the things that I wasn't getting inside of my home, inside of this home was one thing. And then being able to go with them, go shopping, get a pair of gym shoes or get some money put in my pocket, that's another thing. But never questioning, what they do or why they do it. Never, not even
that's
caring.
Like being in a real family.
Yeah.
It's just like unconditional acceptance.
This went on for a while. Of course, during school, then it was a truant officer. A truant officer reports that to the school principal, and they do their processing, which, includes the parent, and the courts. And so my mother being notified that I was truant from school, and also them talking to my mother from whatever the conversation consisted of, led them to include the courts, the probate courts, and I had to eventually appear before a probate court judge for truancy from school. Once my mother revealed that I was also a truant from home, I also was being put up under the probate court judge's guidance for that, which eventually led me to probation. And if I was to violate that probation, I would end up in a boys' youth home, which I did. And I ended up in a boys' youth home for truancy from home and truancy from school. And so the court's intervention didn't bring anything such as counseling or nothing like that.
Right. Or even, did they even determine that your mom kicked you out?
None of those investigations took place.
Yeah, it's like they didn't even really care.
It was the fact that you're not in school, you're a minor, and you're not home. So it was more so geared towards you're going to be disciplined or punished, to get you back right, get you back in school and to stay at home. Not understanding the factors, none of that, or investigation into the factors. So I did violate that probation and end up doing some time in a youth home. I got out, again on probation, and I end up violating it again because the conditions at home never change. So I would go home a couple days, maybe a week, and things would be the same again. So I eventually go back to the streets, and I eventually, go back to this family. And so why I chose this family over the other one, because of the thrill. The thrill of being young, you being out. In this family, there was more rules, there was more
structure.
Exactly. In this one,
which you weren't used to at this point. So
and with this family, I can be wild. I can pretty much be me. I'm not answering to nobody, and I'm thinking this is what life is about. And so, seeing life from that frame just kept me attracted and, handcuffed to living in the streets or wanting to be in the streets. And so school's not working, home's not working, eventually went back before a probate court judge. Again, same probate court judge, got tired, made me a ward of the state. I'm keeping you within our jurisdiction of the courts. And so I went to a boys placement center. Age 15, I think it was till I turned 16. I went there. I learned things from other guys my age or a year older, more how to be responsible and accountable. And also they had a program that worked with families. And so in order for me to be able to return back home with my mother, she had to attend the program and be, 100% involved. And she did. And so I was allowed to go home on visits and stuff. It was beautiful. Eventually I graduated the program. And when I graduated, I came home. Not even 24 hours. My mother resorted back to being that person, who was, high off prescription drugs, drunk, argumentative, physically, verbally violent against me. And in my mind, I'm like, I thought you changed. I thought you went through this program with someone different. But you learn she only did that to get you back, to get me back inside of the home where she wanted her son back. Not for the reason to help me, help myself. I was like, that's it. I went back to that family who had, since I've been gone, of course, things had changed. Where you had more young guys in the streets selling crack cocaine, where a lot of money flowed. And so being gone from the streets and coming back and getting back with this family, now things was different in terms of who is involved in selling drugs. How life is being lived by young people on the streets, how much money you can make, and all of the more criminal things that you can get into as a young person.
You hadn't sold any drugs on the streets
No.
up until this point,
Up
right?
until this point.
Yeah, because you weren't really
Right.
even seeing that aspect of what they did, right?
Right. So once home, again with this family, I end up being offered a position to move, like smuggle drugs, from one city to another. And so basically you go from one town to another, open up shop, find you a house to keep dope in, and can then turn that into a spot, a weight house, whatever you want to do, or find another house to turn into a weight house.
And then guys can pick up from you there.
Exactly.
And then they have like a home base.
Exactly. And when your connect comes from your main city they can drop it off at another house other than the house that people can come get dope from you at. So that's like the operations, Once I got involved in that, I seen money, but the money that I seen was being made and given to the leaders of the family. It wasn't given to me in my pocket, So as a young person, I didn't understand it like that. I just understood it like this is the way it's supposed to go, and this is just life. It doesn't have to make sense. You making it make sense, even though it's not, but for a young person, that's how they see life, who's in a part of the streets. And so there came jealousy from other drug dealers. So there came fights, you get into fights or verbal confrontations or shootouts. You would shoot at each other, and it'd be based around rivalry for territory.
Tell us about that day. You guys were outside, right?
So it was a shooting that happened outside. When you're in a drug area, the climate is always intense. Mm-hmm. So you can look at somebody and the person who you look at may not like the way you're looking at them and be like, what's up? And cuss you out for looking at them and reach for their gun. Who is you? And if you still bag it down, they might shoot you. It could be somebody want to rob you. So they can act like they want to come buy something from you and then turn around and pull out a gun and rob you. So the element is just a dangerous element. Anything can happen just like that. And that's what normally does happen. So that night wasn't a night in particular. It's just a night amongst many nights of being in a heavy drug infested area, where a lot of criminal elements take place. A shootout just happened. Was it festering? As I mentioned earlier, it was festering because you had the drug dealers of that town.
The rivalry, yeah.
Did not want you up in their territory. So, that's enough of the festering for it to, okay, when I see you, I'm going to shoot you or I'm just going to pick with you. It's in that element, those are the things that happen. Just like that, the snap of a finger, the blink of an eye. It just, and why it happens? Because it's all centered around money. You're making thousands and thousands of dollars, in minutes. That's what causes people, especially being young, to react like that. It's like because you're taking money out. They call it taking money out my pocket or food out my mouth. So, that night, a shootout occurred. An innocent bystander was murdered by the firearm that I was discharging in the shootout. I was shot that same evening at a drug house that I used to distribute drugs from. I was shot at the house and the owner of the house was shot and murdered. And so me being shot landed me into the hospital for a little while, maybe a couple of days. I'm just thinking a week maybe, I'm not for certain. I eventually went back home with my mother and I stayed home maybe 3 days before I was arrested by homicide and charged with open murder, intent to commit murder and possession of felony firearm. I was taken from my grandmother's house because I had left my mother's house and went to go spend time with my grandmother. While at my grandmother's house, they came and arrested me, took me into custody. So I had a probate court hearing, phase 1, phase 2. I was found to stand over to adult court. And so I entered the adult court. During my probate court phase 1 and phase 2 hearing, I did have a state appellate attorney. I would see
so technically a public defender.
A public defender.
Yeah.
I would see my mother, who would be trying to attend some of the hearings, and that was it. I hadn't seen her because I was in the youth home and I wasn't allowed no contact visits, period. So that was the only time I would see her. Once I went over to adult court, was bound to stand trial as an adult, I also had to be placed in the custody of the sheriffs because now I will be tried as an adult. So I entered the county jail then. That was the first time I was able to see my mother. So I was the youngest person then in the county jail. The sheriff came to see me, didn't know what to do with me, was scared.
When did you find out that somebody had been murdered during that shootout? Like, did you automatically know when you left?
I found out somebody had been murdered once I went to the hospital when I was shot. I had found out then because it was some people that came to see me in the hospital from that town that told me.
Did you think you had anything to do with it?
No, not at all.
So when the homicide detectives came to your grandmother's house, you had no idea they were coming?
No.
Once you were in the custody of the sheriff, what did he do? Did he just keep you segregated from everyone?
Yeah, so the sheriff came and talked to me about it. And he didn't want to keep me where I temporarily was at, which was like a hole.